Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Monica, and today I wanted to talk with you about, would you like to increase the odds of having a happy and successful retirement? Well, if so, I have 5 areas that you need to focus on. Now, prior to my own retirement, I did a significant amount of research. I talked to a financial advisor, I talked to individuals that were already retired, and of course, I did tons of research on YouTube and checked out a lot of different creators and what they had to say about retirement to ensure that I covered my bases as much as possible about things that I needed to think about so that I had peace of mind going into my retirement. So let's dive in. The number one area that you really need to think about is money. Is the money going to work? What's your budget going to look like? So I encourage you to take a real honest look at what do your finances look like for retirement. Look at what do your retirement accounts look like, your 401ks, how much do you anticipate getting from Social Security, and what's the real budget going to look like. And don't forget to take into account taxes that may need to come out of those 401k accounts or investment accounts and everything. So make sure you take that into account as well. But take a realistic look at it. How much are you currently spending? How much do you anticipate spending during retirement? And like I said, I encourage you to do what I did, is track that spending, that every penny you spend for several months to see, what does it really look like, and make sure that you have, that you know where your money is going and everything. So definitely encourage you to do that. The other thing is, we've all heard that term of keeping up with the Joneses. When it comes to your retirement, don't worry about keeping up with the Joneses. Just because your neighbor that retired, or a friend or family member or whatever, went out and bought a boat when they retired, or they're planning to take 3 European vacations every year during their retirement, or whatever, you don't need to keep up with them. Unless those are things that you really want for your retirement, you do not need to keep up with them. You don't need to be doing the same things that they're doing. Everything. This is your retirement, not anyone else's. Plan for the retirement that you want, the retirement that you're comfortable with, and the retirement that will make you happy. Okay. Number 2 is family and friends. Okay. So who are you going to spend your retirement with? Maybe you already know, maybe you have, a big family or a big friendship network already in place. So you already know that, when it comes to socialization, you're not going to be lacking at all, that you have that huge social network, everything already in place. Everything. But if that's not the case, do you need to expand your friendship network, perhaps? Now, obviously, this is going to vary depending on the person that you are and whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Those things will all come into account. Me personally, I lean much more toward being an introvert, so I don't need such a big network to feel content and satisfied and everything from a social standpoint. But think about that and really look at it realistically about what is that going to look like for you, because having that social network in place is really going to be a key factor in whether or not your retirement is going to be a happy one. Everything. So think about, okay, if you do need to expand that social network, how are you going to do that? Are there activities you can get involved in, clubs you can join, different activities, and, at your county parks or your library or wherever that you can get involved in, or volunteer opportunities. Just really think about, who are you going to spend your time with? Okay. Number 3, goals and activities. Okay, now this is not to say that you need to set some grand goals for your retirement. Not at all. But do you have goals in mind that you want to achieve? How are you going to spend your time? Do you have hobbies already in place that you're excited about being able to spend more time pursuing those hobbies? Or maybe there's an interest that you have that you just haven't had time to pursue yet. So you're looking forward to pursuing that interest or that hobby. What is that going to look like for you? You don't want to go into it just saying, oh, I'll just wing it and I'm sure I'll think of something when I get there, because, otherwise you could end up sitting for hours in front of the TV doing nothing. And that's not going to be a good thing long term. So really think about and have activities in mind that are going to challenge you, that are going to keep you engaged, that are going to make you happy. And really, really think about, how are you going to spend your time? How are you going to fill up your days? Okay, number 4. The next one is location. Where are you going to spend your time? And are you going to stay where you're at during your retirement, or are you planning to relocate? Now, for some of you, it may be a given. Okay, you're going to relocate closer to your family, so you already know exactly where you're going to move. You don't want to consider anywhere else. You've got that locked in already. That's great. For others, you may say, okay, I definitely want to move. That could be to an area that has a lower cost of living. It could be to an area that has more desirable weather. Obviously, a lot of people relocate from areas where they get tons of snow because they don't want to have to deal with shoveling snow and the cold and everything during their retirement. So they move, perhaps to the Southwest, Arizona or different places where there's more of a hot, dry type of environment. And of course, there's others that move to the Southeast, like Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, where, they we don't get as much snow and everything, only on occasion. And, I personally live in the Southeast. I can't speak to the hot, dry temperatures of Arizona and, places like that. I've never lived there, but I can, speak to the Southeast. Like, if you're planning to relocate somewhere, make sure you've really checked out, like, what is the weather and the climate really like there? Because I know in the Southeast, humidity is no joke. So if you have the opportunity and like you're planning to move to the Southeast, try to spend some time, a significant amount of time, if possible, in the area before you pick up and move, to make sure that you really know what it's like to live in that humidity day in and day out during the summer months. I will say, coming somewhere on vacation and living there day in and day out is very different. So really think about that. And, I always laugh and, tell people, yep, that humidity, if you're not used to it, it can really blindside you. And for those of us like myself with curly hair, during those summer months with that humidity, you're never going to have a good hair day. Just accept it, make peace with it. It is what it is. And, then there's the mosquitoes and things like that. So I'm certainly not trying to discourage you, from moving to the Southeast. I love it here, absolutely. But, make sure you know what you're getting into. That's the whole point. Make sure, a place may look really desirable in vacation pamphlets or, during that week or so of vacation that you spent there. But again, living there day in, day out is different. And have you really spent time there during those peak times of either extreme heat and dryness or, extreme heat and humidity? So really think about that when you're thinking about where are you going to live. Okay. Now, the final thing, number 5, is health and health care. Okay. And, this is all about, keeping yourself as healthy as possible for as long as possible. Okay. So here, obviously think about, again, you don't want to fall into, just sitting in front of the TV. You want to make sure that you're staying mobile, that you're staying as active and healthy as you can so that you can enjoy your retirement for as long as you can. So think about, what is that going to look like, with regard to keeping yourself healthy? Do you need to implement some kind of regular exercise program? Maybe that's going for a walk several times a week. Maybe it's joining a gym. Maybe it's joining an exercise class or whatever. But just think about, how are you going to, do all that you can to keep yourself as healthy as possible for the long term so you can really enjoy your retirement and enjoy the things that you want to do in your retirement. Now, the other aspect of that is health care. Okay. Now, whether you may be very healthy now and not have to go to the doctor very often, But for most of us, as we age, of course, we're likely going to need more doctor's appointments, everything. Now, I can't speak to this personally. It's not an issue currently where I live. However, I have heard that in certain parts of the country, that the doctors are so overwhelmed with the sheer volume of appointments that it is very hard to get an appointment with a doctor when you need it. So be conscious of that. I have not done a lot of research in this area, but be conscious of it and do your own research. Everything to make sure that you're comfortable with what the healthcare looks like in the area that you're planning to relocate to. Just so again, you have a heads up, you have a plan, and you're prepared for that. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to cover with you today. I hope you found this helpful. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. But otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.